Jan Zielonka, Professor Emeritus of European Politics at the University of Oxford, Professor of Politics and International Relations at the University of Venice, and last but not least, visiting professor at the Warsaw University. Welcome to the program, Professor.
Good evening.
Well, there's little about futurology in your professional CV, but let's talk about future of politics. Out of all those global processes taking place, being war, tariff war, climate change, technological disruption, which one do you think is the most important process for the young people, let's say for the Gen Z or Gen Z, Generation Z? What will really determine their future?
I think electoral demography. Young people do not have enough votes because there are more voters older, my age.
That will be deciding for the young.
So politicians go to the elections, make pictures with children, talk about the future of our new generations. But when they have to make tough choices, and choices in politics, particularly about money, are always difficult, and they have no options but to please those who have exactly the votes. And surprise, surprise, old generation wins. Take the climate change, for instance, right? And my generations will survive. It will be sometimes too hot, there will be some floods, there will be extreme weather, but we'll probably survive. But think about the young generations. Well,
sounds like a miserable prospect for them.
Miserable prospect. Or think about public services. You know, they are going slowly bankrupt. So the young people all think about public debt. All politicians, as we will, have a fiscal discipline, but then elections are coming and they have to please some segments of their electorates. Which segments? Not the young ones.
Right, okay.
Those who have votes. Which means that the future for them is really grim, regardless of all the things you just mentioned, which are serious enough.
I can't let you go on with that any longer. Okay, we started with Hitchcock's earthquake, a Great Depression. Now, Professor, where do you see at least a tiny light at the end of this tunnel? Tiny source of hope?
Look, each time people ask me whether the situation is good or bad, whether I'm optimist or pessimist, I always give them this anecdote attributed to Yeltsin, but it could be also about Wałęsa and so on. Mr. President, could you describe in one word the situation in our country? Good. Maybe in 2 words, no good. So you see, this is very much depends whether you're optimist or pessimist. I think young people have the future, and we are making, for instance, technologically enormous progress because, for instance, artificial intelligence has a lot of advantages. But if the current generations of those who are in power will not regulate artificial intelligence, we will be in the situations like 100 years ago, when aircrafts started to work, and there is no air traffic regulation, right, so to speak. So wherever you move, there are all advantages of our knowledge and our technological abilities. But on the other hand, if certain precautions are not being done, those technologies and all these problems which my generation basically gives them as a present will become very hard for them.
Right. So in this world of chaos which you have just described, and I fully agree with that, you're an expert on politics. What is the future of politics? If I can just give you my impression of what future politics looks like to me is the picture of Donald Trump, recent picture of the famous or infamous film that he published on his social media. Donald Trump, the crown on his head, throwing mud at best, perhaps that was another thing, at the people who are protesting against his politics. What does that tell us about the future of politics?
Look, it was really pathetic and not the first time. But I think the problem is not related to personalities. We have people like Donald Trump because the voters are desperate. They are confused. They don't believe that they have the future. You know, even in a country which was supposed to guarantee the future, the promised land, America. If you look at opinion polls, majority of those people believe that their children will be worse off than them. And so they are voting for those who first they look for scapegoats, and the scapegoats are those who were in power, previously. And then they look for people who promise them
miracles, or basically
miracles.
a great future. But is it a problem that on the populist side we do have good leaders, whatever we call good leaders? They're good leaders. People follow them. And on the liberal side, we do not have leaders. We do not have a clear vision that can somehow grasp
I don't think so. I don't think so. Those leaders are anything but good. They are new. They are fresh for many of those people. They haven't. Look, we have to understand. All these populism is based on the anti-liberal agenda. Why on the anti-liberal agenda? Because the liberal agenda dominated post-war consensus.
People are fed up
in Europe in particular, both people who were Christian Democrats or Social Democrats, they all subscribe to various liberal values.
Can I just quote you from one of your speeches? We betrayed our liberal principles and socialist voters, you said. We practiced capitalism for the poor and socialism for the rich. We tolerated rampant inequality and the destruction of the welfare state. We treated citizens as consumers and objects of manipulation. That was, do you remember when you said that? Almost 10 years ago.
Yes.
2016.
And
what has changed
and
since
have
then?
we ever apologized for this? Never. Success has many mothers, but failure.
But have we learned anything from this? It's been almost 10 years.
Well, the only lesson we draw from is that we try to imitate populists, because we think that if we promise miracles, people will vote for us. But you see, since I wrote these things, which was kind of retrospections about liberal reign, which was not all negative. If you could cite other positive evaluations of liberal rule, but in recent years, you know, we've made some mistakes, and we never acknowledge that all these things happen on our watch. For instance, we never said we cherish inequalities, but if you look at statistics, the inequalities were constantly rising. Yeah, we invaded a lot of countries against international law, and we were supposed to uphold international law. So we have done a lot of things which were against what we were preaching.
Right.
And people simply said enough. But you see, since then, I realized that the problem is much more serious.
Right.
That it is not only for these and that politicians who got things wrong. The problem is that democracy as we have is unable to deal with the world we are living in, because this world has changed in the meantime.
It's too complex, too chaotic?
No, it is flat, And it is
Flat?
Flat means, you know, this is this famous book about globalizations, but our former student from San Antonio, Friedman, New York columnist who wrote, the word is flat, which basically the impact of the internet, which blown out the territorial borders, and acceleration, because the internet also accelerated the world. And so our democracies, which are in the nation states, do not have a proper size to deal with transnational pressures, and they are too slow to respond to this enormous acceleration. I just give you an example. Last year, these people who invented artificial intelligence, they proposed 6 months moratorium to give time to governments to regulate artificial intelligence. 6 months in artificial intelligence, it's a lot of time. You know, in 6 months, in this area, revolutionary thing.
It is eternity. Yes.
Politicians, 6 months? What you can do in 6 months? Even in one country, the parliamentary committees wouldn't reach any consensus.
Talk and talk for years,
exactly.
And they still
and globally,
consider it.
So they said, self-regulate yourself. I mean, you see, we are out of sync with the world we are living in, which is basically increasingly non-territorial and accelerated.
You're smiling a lot, Professor Zielonka, and when I look at the titles of your books, they're so pessimistic. You write about the end of the European Union. You talk about end of liberalism. Your recent book, Lost Future. You're a professor of pessimism.
Well, I would like to be more optimistic, but you forgot to mention this subtitle, The Lost Future and How to Regain It.
That's true.
So there is a way to get out of this, yeah? But we cannot believe that it is going to be done by decree, by one golden ideas. And here I blame you journalists a lot, because many times I ask by journalists, okay, it's a very interesting story about this time and space, but could you give me 1 or 2 ways to improve the situations? It is more or less when you go abroad and at the airport your flight is delayed, you go to the bookshop, and there are all these books, you know, how to lose 20 kilos in 1 month. Okay. Or how to become a millionaire within 6 months. I mean, good luck. It doesn't work this way.
Okay, but you provoked it yourself. Let me ask this question. How to regain it, you're asking? Okay, in 1 or 2 sentences, how to regain it?
Look, you need to make a diagnosis. If you believe that the problem is that the democracies are basically located within nation state, and this nation state actually have monopoly on power and decision, even within the European Union. The member states decide what is going to be done, right? If you decide that this is the major problem, you have to basically abolish the monopoly, give some decisions to either transnational actors like European Union or local actors, because a lot of those problems actually are manifested in local communities. Okay. But we have the opposite trend. Sovereignty is today the slogan which let politicians win elections. Everyone wants power back from Brussels, from local governments. Enough. Right. Good. I say this is madness. Okay.
Professor, you told me just before we started this conversation that you know much more about wine than you know about politics. So the last question is especially for you. Tell me, what's the influence of wine on politics?
Well, difficult to say. I know very well former Prime Minister of Italy, Giuliano Amato, he was twice prime minister. I practically didn't have a party because the party he was a member as a young man, Socialist Party, was disgraced and so on. And twice became prime minister. What is worse, in a country when people drink wine for lunch and for dinner, you know, in moderation. He didn't drink any wine. So I asked him, how is it possible that you went so far in politics without drinking wine? In Poland, when I grown up, if somebody would not drink vodka, they would think he is a spy. And he smiled and he said, well, you have to know how to be at the table, how to behave at the table. And sometimes it helps if you are not confused.
Although one has to be, let's admit it, has to be careful with alcohol. Thank you very much for joining us at TVP World, Professor Jan Zielonka. Thank you.